What everyday skill becomes suspicious if you're too good at it? Story 1. Lying and answering with double meaning. Don't know the term for this, but basically saying yes and no at the same time. So the other person thinks the answer is yes when you mean no. I did it all the time around my parents. I got good at it. So like my father once asked for my opinion on him becoming a substitute teacher. He's a horrible teacher. Too much ego narcissism and not enough respect or patience for others. Since at the time I lived with my parents, I didn't want to give an honest answer, and he was only looking for validation anyway. So I told him if he has evaluated his capabilities and found them suitable, he should pursue the best means to use those talents. He heard what he wanted to hear. My daughter supports me. I said what I meant. Leave me out of this. Your failure is on you. He became a sub, proved me right, and quit after a year, blaming the kids for being the reason. I just about never use it outside of my parents, only once or twice when confronted with unstable people. Story 2. Remembering conversations like a transcript, I often have to soften. We made these plans and clarifying this point about it to am I making it up or did we arrange to do this? Questions arrangement. No, because I'm sure we were talking about X, then Y, and then you said you'd never done Z, so we said we'd do it next time you came round. Knowing full well that's exactly what was said, but not wanting to seem like a creep. Story 3. Memorizing account routing numbers. Used to work in a gym. People gave that information for billing, and I had to enter multiple times for verification. I had to do it so often I started memorizing it the first time to enter the other times. Story 4. Remembering innocuous details about people. Ages ago, me and my friends had a games night where we got to know each other. This was early days of our group, by making quizzes about ourselves, and I was fairly successful when it was things we'd talked about before. My friends joke I have a spreadsheet with details about every friend, but I don't. I just put care into remembering details because it either impresses or makes them feel nice that I remembered and cared. None of them really do that for me beyond my obvious habits, but it's fine. It's a delicate dance between maintaining peace at home and staying true to your own thoughts. Sometimes the most useful communication skill isn't about what you say, but how you frame it so everyone involved hears exactly what they need to hear to move on. Story 5. So many of these comments are about an amazing memory for details. My suspicious superpower is that I forget shoot within seconds, but I know useless shoot like the wind speed on Saturn or pi to 11 digits. Story 6. Being a single guy who is extremely good at handling kids and taking care of them. Main reason I started to actively avoid children and show hatred towards them. Story 7. As a kid, I never realized, but I have a nearly creepy tendency to read people's emotions by the tiniest movements. The posture could be ever so slightly off, or they could say a word with a bit too much stress on a level. My parents always found it creepy. My uncle has always called it a gift. Whenever I do it, people always look so confused, and I've gotten to the point of just telling them it doesn't matter and getting to the point of what's going on. I will say I'm not 100 on this. Sometimes I probably try to look for something wrong and end up missing. But no matter how well you think you hide your emotions, remember there's somebody close enough to everybody that they can always tell, even if they don't say anything. Story 8. Lying. And not like the everyday white lies like, how are you? I'm okay. No, I mean the Kaiser Soze kind of lying. Story 9. Remembering people's timings and schedules. Making up tales and jokes on the spot. Stating the blind spots of shops and markets, taking bloods, and performing exams on people, animals. Noting observations and stating eerily accurate information on someone you haven't met yet. Winning every game of poker because you know the odds. Story 10. People that are able to drastically change their personality or the way they talk and act when around different groups of people or someone else arrives. Answer, depending on your friend group, you may start having different amount of empathy and have difference in how impulsive you are or how much you talk ECT. Different amount of empathy often means different changes in someone's personality as well. As someone that hangs out with a lot of different groups, gets to notice this a lot in myself, and I'm trying to kind of reduce it. Story 11. Timing how fast people drink. As a bartender, I've got too many regulars that I don't even got to look at the glassware. Humans are creatures of habit. Learn their habits, learn the human. But apparently it's kind of weird that I just kind of know and have a new drink for them at the right moment. I thought it was good service, but no, it's apparently kind of creepy. Story 12. Adopting others' methods of speech and mannerisms. Think how people that travel move to a region with a certain dialect eventually adopt it. but being able to do it in the span of a conversation can be eerie. Story 13. Leaving a group of people with none of them noticing. I have always been a bit shy and my voice very quiet, so when I need to leave, when a group of people is having a conversation, they usually don't hear my "I have to go, bye," so later they'd be like, "You just disappears sometimes." Story 14. Moving through unreasonably tight and cluttered spaces normally. My friends and I used to hang out at an extremely cluttered warehouse that belonged to a hoarder friend. It was full to the point where moving at all without getting stuck on something or causing a garbage avalanche was difficult. And there I was just gliding through hills of hoarded garbage like some kind of ghost. They told me it was creepy. Story 15. Counting bills, I'm really good at it, and, well, I've been assumed by police and some actual thugs to be a criminal, but I was just an accountant for my family's business. Story 16. Being really good at tying knots. I used to work on the loading dock at Sears and Roebuck. I practice tying different knots and cinch hitches. I've had a few raised eyebrows and curious questions over the years. Story 17. Knowing huge amounts of random statistics. Also in my case, having a huge amount of medical knowledge without practicing medicine. My mom was a nurse, so I used to read her medical textbooks. Story 18. I can memorize numbers really well to the point that it makes the Oterre graduate students in my astrophysics program uncomfortable. No one has ever been comfortable hearing that I remember the score of every professional sporting event that I've ever been to. Story 19. Closing the door handle with no sound. I dislike it when people just simply close the door making an annoying sound. Can't you just turn the handle and gently close the door? Story 20. Drummers who can grab another stick after dropping one without skipping a beat. That means their grip sucks, because the only way to get good at that is to do it 1,000 times. Story 21. Excuse making and phrasing. Haven't done an assignment? Make a long-winded but believable story about how some system was playing up, phrasing it to make it sound like you're the victim. Story 22. I remember every single detail about everyone, but don't tell them because they'll think that I'm a stalker or something LMAO. Story 23. This will get buried, but for me it was reading. I was really fast with good comprehension, starting at a very young age, and so I got a lot of doubt that I was actually understanding what I read, and every teacher would say I rushed through material. It still pisses me off that I had to constantly defend myself about it, although my parents would always back me up, so that was good. They'd lived with the evidence long enough to know I was telling the truth. Answer. When I was a kid, we had these bluebonnet books that you could read for prizes if you got a good score on the comprehension test. My teacher accused me of cheating because I was reading them too fast. So she sent me to the library and had the librarian watch me while I read one, and then the librarian administered the test. I got to act like a smug little shoot for a minute when the librarian told her I aced my test. Then I got lectured anyway on how long-term comprehension doesn't happen when you speed read and that I shouldn't be reading just for the prizes. The next teacher I had, third grade, rather than being suspicious about it, tested my reading level. I scored ninth grade and she asked me about GT classes. Apparently I had been in them, then moved, and when I came back, they misplaced me. Got moved back into GT and noticed the way teachers treated me from then on was like night and day. Learned a lot about bias though. Story 24. Remembering how to navigate to a place once you've been there once. In my case, even after decades have passed. I've had to feign forgetfulness to appear normal on dates, because apparently remembering my way around gives people creepy vibes. Story 25. Being able to strike up a rapport with random people. After someone else sees you do it, they act weird like you're a Jedi or something. Story 26. Having mentally prepared for chaos or emergency scenarios in your head, so when they happen, people are shocked that you actually had a plan. An overthinker. Story 27. Profiling people. Most of us unconsciously notice things about people and can put a lot together about them in short order. However, we rarely really consciously process this. Small things like unconsciously being able to tell if a person is an immigrant or second generation. There are differences in hair, makeup, clothes, posture that allow you to make such distinctions. And though this can be copied, it's still usually pretty easy to spot. I always tired to make an effort to learn how to say hello, how are you? I'm good, thank you, you're welcome, and sorry in as many languages as possible so I can greet coworkers in their native language. I realize that some people might see this as othering people, but my efforts in this respect were always well-meaning. On one occasion, I remember meeting a new coworker, and I asked her if I could guess her native language. She said sure, and I guess Romanian, and she confirmed. So I said, "Ce mai faci?" She thought it was really neat. However, another Romanian coworker asked me later, how did you know she spoke a foreign language? She hadn't even spoken yet? I responded that I wasn't sure, but I guessed that she looked slightly different. I didn't specify, but it was likely the jawline and her style of clothes. My colleague then said, you mean we look different? I wasn't sure how to reply, so I just said, I guess there's a subtle difference in clothes and posture and such, but I couldn't pinpoint it. She literally started crying. I felt so awful. I think because she was white, she felt like she just fit in and that nobody would see her as different. But this experience has made her feel racialized. I felt absolutely awful about it because my efforts were always meant to be inclusive and be respectful of other people's cultures. X200B. So if we were able to verbalize our thought process or these unconscious observations were processed without thinking, it would come across as really creepy and surprisingly hurtful. It's fascinating how our brains process patterns and cultural markers without us even realizing it, but it also shows how easily those observations can be misinterpreted. What feels like a simple observation to one person can carry a much heavier emotional weight for someone else, regardless of the original intent. Story 28. Trauma skills. I'm hypersensitive and cry if someone crushes a bee, but as soon as shoot actually hits the fan, I'm an acid in delegating tasks, gotten in between people. It's shocking to me too, because I really dislike confrontation, but I dislike someone being messed with without help more. So I've got the duality of, I can't deal with anything until it's nuclear, and then I'm the fudge queen of handling it. Story 29. Knowing IT skills. I've been labeled as a hacker on many occasions for helping people with basic stuff like Wi-Fi and knowing too much about their network, even though everything is default and wide open. Story 30. Knowing a friend's schedule. Especially for close friends, I've remembered their schedules just from them randomly bringing up what classes they have in conversations. Answer, I've remembered at least half my class's schedule and probably more. It's happened a lot where someone would be like, yeah, I've got metalwork next. And I'm like, no, Miss Johnson's French class is on next and she's your teacher. And then they'd be like, yeah, you're right. People were freaked out at first, but then they realize I'm just a walking calendar who soaks up information like I'm a sponge. Story 31. I can sit with my phone next to me for hours. The minute I get up to get a drink, take a shower, pee, whatever, right? It rings and I don't answer it because, I'm away for a few minutes. So now everybody complains that I'm hard to reach. Story 32. Using your peripherals. I've become really good mine. Another answer is looking back and forth. When multiple people stare at me, I look at one person, then the next, and repeat until they either ask me what I'm doing or stop staring at me. Story 33. I am very observant about my surroundings. Story 34. Walking quietly. I've actually learned to start dragging my feet to deliberately make noise when I get within hearing range of people, so I don't startle them by coming up right behind them out of nowhere. Story 35. Not really suspicious, but people are always perplexed by how high I can jump. I just have some weird talents, I guess. Story 36. Remembering things about them they forgot. I told my friend I was getting a job at a store we know. She told me, I think I've been there before. Then I told she has, and I repeated the conversation we had, word for word. I got some weird looks from her, LOL. Story 37. I can't be the only one, though. It got me some seriously weird looks when I was young. So my family is big, like on all sides, biofather plus stepfather. So growing up equals lots of houses. To me, each house had a smell, good or bad. It didn't matter what it was unique. Example situation Timiar. So when, say, a sweater was left at our house and parents were talking about whose it was, I just walked up and I smelled it, looked at them and said it must be Cousin Ashley's. They gave me a weird look and I just explained that every house we go to has a certain scent. They kind of got it, but it sure looked like what I was saying threw them for a loop. Story 38. Lying. Wait, no, that's wrong. The better you are, the less likely anybody notices. The problem comes up when you use your skills to help somebody out, and they later remember just how effective and seamless your cover story was. Story 39. Not flinching, jumping, or being scared. Everyone in my family is constantly trying to frighten me, jump scare me, or somehow make me lose my nerve. It is now a competition that has extended from just kids trying to prank me to my extended family as well for the past 8 years or so. My MIL thinks I'm a card-carrying sociopath, and my kids just think I'm super hardcore, especially for what they call just an old mom. Story 40. Recently found out I can fake a lie detector for most small lies. I'm a pretty honest person, but it is interesting. Story 41. Avoiding people. Everyone assumes I'm up to something because I spend so much time alone and out of sight. Story 42. Apparently, people think I'm some kind of mutant because I actually remember song lyrics in any language they're in. Story 43. I grew up in a somewhat harmful behavior household, so I'm really good at reading micro-expressions and observing people's behavior and body language. I know people's moods before ever talking to them. I know when they are lying about something, and I know when certain situations are going to turn bad. A friend called me sneaky because I notice everything around me, even if it looks like I'm not paying attention. My shrink calls it being hypervigilant. I call it being quietly observant. Story 44. Connecting USB Type-A devices. Some sort of wizardry is going on if you can consistently get it right. Story 45. Walking around the house late at night with the lights off. I used to do this not to wake anyone up. Story 46. Sales. When your friends and family realize you can talk people into things for a living, sometimes the sharper ones wonder what you've talked them into. Story 47. Counting calories and knowing how many calories are in every food that exists. Not always, but typically a sign of an eating disorder. Story 48. Lock-picking husband got a kid after watching someone on YouTube and just works on padlocks or bike locks for a hobby. He even got our friend into his home after they forgot their keys. We don't really brag about his hobby because turns out in our state being pulled over with a lock-picking kit can earn you a long chat with the police. Story 49. Knowing a friend's schedule. I've gotten to the point where I'd call my friend as they walk in the door. We're darn near 12 hours apart as well. Story 50. Firearms and gunsmithing in general. Yeah, I consider myself a bit of a gun nut. No, I'm not one of those gun nuts. Story 51. Walking silently. Well, I'm a discreet person, so I try not to disturb people or draw any attention, and I usually surprise them instead. Story 52. Tearing boxes. I had a female coworker who knew how to tear huge boxes like it's nothing. Like in 2 seconds, there is nothing left out of the box. Fire at time she did it, she got a lot of strange looks. Story 53. Faking your emotional state. I don't think my brain releases enough feely juices, so I don't get stressed easily or happy easily. But when I get happy or sad enough, it's like a dam broke and all the emotion comes out. This means I get a lot of practice making it seem like I'm happy or sad about stuff that is socially correct to be happy or sad about. Story 54. Apparently being happy and smiling a lot. Just found out some people thought I was being fake and disingenuous. Story 55. I can almost always tell which way is north, which means I can get to anywhere I've been once by just navigating where I think it should be. My mind has a pretty decent map. I can also count both fairly fast and pretty accurately, so maybe the measurements of travel X amount in west naturally occurs on some subconscious level. This doesn't help me too much because I'm horrible with names, so, oh, you mean that cool bar on Broadway? Means literally nothing to me until we get there and I remember I dislike this place. Story 56. Paying attention. I mean when someone is talking, paying them absolute attention. What they are saying, how they are saying it, why they might be saying it. People don't like this. Story 57. Looking someone in the eyes, I once made one of my friends start crying because I was looking them in the eyes so deeply. LMFAO. Story 58. Being perceptive. I'm constantly noticing little things around the house, and when I mention them to my husband, he thinks I'm being a detective and suspicious of him. Like, sorry, the single red cookie crumb on the counter gave away your midnight snack last night. I'm not looking for stuff, I can't help it, lol, and I don't care about your cookie anyway. Story 59. A lot of people on here know how to pick locks. It concerns their coworkers when they have to use it for an emergency, lol. Answer, yeah. When a department head at my old grocery store locked the only key to the new bathroom door and said, bathroom, I saved the day. Of course, then I noticed I was being watched pretty often. The assistant manager would come down my aisle and check on me twice a day, lol. Same deal when my dad locked the shed key in the shed. Suddenly, the back porch security camera was pointed at the shed. Story 60. Figuring out someone's thought process in a nutshell and doing the work they slack on without even them knowing. Story 61. Guessing people's age. I'm really good at that for some reason. One time I was riding home with some coworkers who gave me a ride because my car got snowed in, and they asked me how old I was. So I told them and then said, what are you guys like 27 and 29? Which turned out to be both of their ages. They acted impressed that I knew that, but the rest of the car ride was really quiet and awkward afterwards. Story 62. Jumping fences. If you're a farmer, it's normal until you do it once at school and all of a sudden you're on the road to be a delinquent. Story 63. I cannot be snuck up on. I have 3 boys who tried their entire lives to sneak up on me, and I always know where they are and when to expect them to come around the corner. Story 64. I'm very good at getting detailed information in my peripheral vision. I don't have to be looking directly at someone to study them. Makes me sound like a pervert, but it's a skill I developed because of living in situations where letting someone know you're watching them had bad consequences. But so was being ignorant of what they were doing. It's really fudge handy. Also, somewhat related, reading upside down has had its benefits. Story 65. I am really good at blending into a crowd with minimal disguise. I used to live on an island and I worked on the docks. Every time I had to take the boat, I would try to get past all the crew I worked with almost every day without anyone spotting me. Not an easy task, because those guys were pretty sharp and loved to give me shoot. Story 66. It's not a skill, but I have many photos of my friends in random WhatsApp conversations with random people. And if I want a specific photo, I instantly know where that photo is and who sent it to me. I even have a lot of pictures of when they were a child. Story 67. Navigating easily in the dark without any contraption to help you. Basically seeing in the dark. Story 68. Shuffling playing cards. If you can bridge a deck of cards with one hand, let alone cut a deck with one hand, people don't want us shuffling while playing card games. Story 69. Using cable ties and wire cutters. Especially bringing a date home to see a toolbox with aforementioned items in them. I just like having tidy cables, lol. Story 70. Memory. I went to a restaurant I hadn't been to in years, and the host greeted me by my name when I came in. Story 71. Swiftly tapping my card and passing through the turnstiles to get to the subway. One time, a lady thought I was fare evading because I got through way too soon after she passed through. Story 72. Lying. I don't especially like lying, but I found that people are a lot more willing to accept what you say is true if you can prove one part of your lie and deflect the rest through common sense. I don't remember after that. I don't know exactly how it went down. I didn't take notes, obviously, etc. Sprinkle in some acting and people will eat it up as long as you don't push your story and cover your tracks with reasonable doubt or ambiguous wording. For example, I've convinced a close friend of mine that I didn't understand sarcasm for years because I like to answer sarcastic statements literally in deadpan. Every time he explained he was sarcastic, I was laughing on the inside, and that's the extent of my manipulation. That and withholding inconvenient information. I'm actually so good at lying that people think I suck at lying, since whenever I lie, I show it in an obvious way when I really just didn't especially want to talk about it. I then proceed to absolutely destroy them at bluffing games like poker. If I really wanted to lie, you wouldn't know, because the best liars are believed to be honest and open people. There's a fine line between a harmless joke and a full-scale social experiment. Maintaining a persona like that for years takes a level of dedication and consistency that most people wouldn't even consider, leaving others to wonder what else might be hiding behind a deadpan expression. Story 73. Picking a lock. Everyone is always creeped out when I do that, but I'm just too lazy to look for my keys. Story 74. I am better with last names than first names. A lot of my colleagues think that's strange. It's actually super useful. Story 75. Lockpicking. I was really good at it growing up. In 4th grade, I specifically detailed how to unlock a locked car door. I remember my teacher asking me, "How do you know all of this?" At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but I look back and she probably thought I was stealing cars or some shoot. Story 76. Being alert and extremely aware of your surroundings. Source. Been through some shoot as an adolescent. Learn to always check your environment, to the point where I may look sus myself. Story 77. Spotting a liar or hypocrite from a mile away. People like to lie and omit stuff a lot. If you aren't careful, people feel transparent and they don't like you, even if they can't put their finger on why. Story 78. I can look at things and know if they're level or plumb or not. Most people don't believe it until they use an actual level to check. I really didn't realize it was weird until someone told me that most people can't do that. Story 79. Changing tires. Oh, you're good at it? Great, you can help me. If you're too good, you just look like you steal car tires a lot. Story 80. Cars, trucks, or SUVs. Just by quick glance, I can tell the production years, also the make, model, trim level of said vehicle, and what options it more than likely has. Sometimes I can go even further and tell you the paint code. I work in the automotive industry as a collision repair and automotive refinishing specialist. I've always had an interest in cars from a very young age, but it really took off when I was 12 and started working in a body shop. I'm currently 21 years old and know just as much, if not more, than some of the other technicians that have been doing it 20 plus years. Story 81. Reading body language and being particularly sensitive to people. I have a friend who's so good at it, he knows what you're going to do before it ever even crosses your mind. First time he pulled the whammy on me was when I was just about to look for the remote and he handed it to me. No looking around or anything. I just shifted slightly about to get up and he goes, "Here's the remote." Seemed pretty cool at the time, but then a few weeks later we were eating out together and I couldn't decide on whether I should get dish A or dish B. He told me to get dish B even though I'd never even voiced which dishes I was deciding over. I swear he's almost physic. Story 82. Remembering conversations because I actually pay attention. Then years later they change their story. No, that's not what happened, homie. Being able to pick certain locks. After being locked out of our only bathroom at work, waiting hours, I gave in and went and opened it by picking it real quick. Everyone around was shocked. They asked a few questions until I threatened to lock it again and told them they could go pee in a plant or something. Story 83. Counting cash. If you're too good at it, people either think you work at a bank or you're a substances dealer. Story 84. Knowing a bunch of niche stuff. I stay up until 2 a.m. watching and reading stuff about random things I'll never have to know. Like I'd be talking to someone and they would mention something and randomly spout out info about it. Walking Wikipedia. Story 85. I once got into hydroponics. Of course, none of my friends thought I was just growing kale and tomatoes. Story 86. Not really everyday skills, but with drilling things. I work in big retail, and the openers couldn't get into the vault room to load the tills with cash before customers entered for the day. Within 10 minutes, I had the locks drilled out and cash room opened. They were a little suspicious about my speedy entry. LOL. Story 87. Tying a tie from the front, taking off pantyhose, pointing out somebody with a concealed handgun, knowing the amount of cash in a closed wallet. Installing Arch Linux. Story 88. TBH. Anything with being sneaky. So you know how strict parent is often raised secretly uninhibited sneaky kids? Well, guess what I am. In front of my dad until I was 16, I was calm, collected, and submissive. In reality, that was just because I didn't let him see who I really was until certain lines were crossed and I got rebellious, as a boomer might say. I won't break down my whole deal to say why I know these things. Also, I'm not claiming to be a super spy or anything. These are just skills that meet the above criteria and that I've picked up and improved over the years. These are all things that seem normal if you just know how to do them, but I've had it happen more than once where I've implemented one and the people with me have had questions. Things like, one, so picking locks. Sure, like 1 in 3 people can pick a simple or cheap lock, but when you know how to open an electric lock or magnetic security pad, or maybe use the old sound pressure method, you know the one, that thing people do to code locks where they put their ear against it, to open a more complicated locks and have it actually work, people give you a look. 2, moving quietly or reducing visibility. I've met a lot of people who think they can be physically stealthy. It's funny because, yeah, maybe your footsteps are quiet, but I can hear you breathing, you fudge pug. Or maybe you're good at hide and sneak, but I dare you to cross a room. This is what an overly strict father really teaches you. Learn where the shadows are, including your own, and put your hand over your nose, lined up with the bridge's slope, and take long, slow, soft, deep breaths. There's so much more to this one, OMG. I've seen a lot of people say remembering schedules on here, but there's so much more to it. I more say 3, learning someone's patterns, not just their schedules, but the things that might make them deviate from it. This is actually a good life skill to and really makes you a better friend. Knowing when something is different about your friend's behavior can help you help them if something less than good and is affecting their lives. But as soon as you start seeing other people's lives through the little windows they give you and putting the pieces together accurately, then you need to watch yourself. Last is my favorite, 4, double talk. I suppose because of my father, I get really bad anxiety from lying. So I don't, period. Not even little things. I just skirt the truth. I either give an adjacent answer in an indirect way that changes the initial question, or implies an answer where none is to be had, or change the subject slowly. I'll answer with a question, tell a long-winded story as an answer, over-clarify, etc. Sure, lots of people do it, but you have no idea how satisfying it is to get out of trouble not because you lied and are thus accountable, but because you slipped away with no trouble. Makes you feel smart. Granted, that still makes me feel super guilty no matter how minor the issue. TLDR. If you had a strict parent or parents, you probably know the little secrets to living with them. Stay quiet, stay out of sight, don't let them see the mistakes. Not saying that's healthy, but you know what? Maybe that's the parent's fault. It's interesting how certain environments can force a person to develop a very specific set of survival tools, like stealth and pattern recognition. While these skills might seem unusual in a standard setting, they often stem from a place of necessity and a simple desire to remain unnoticed. Story 89. Quoting books. I will start reciting random chapters of books sometimes. I started freaking everyone out when I was quoting a takedown mystery. I no longer do this around people. Story 90. Being calm, for example. A little while I watched the red wedding scene from Game of Thrones with my family for the first time, and I had no reaction. Story 91. Strep throat tests. Used to get strep a lot as a kid, so by the time I was tested for it as a 20-year-old, I had the process down. They stick in the big popsicle stick to hold down your tongue, and then they swab the back of your throat while you try not to gag. Well, I happened to be tested by a relatively new, young, attractive doctor this particular time, and when he complimented me on doing well on the test and not gagging, my response was, "Thanks, I've had practice." If not suspicious, it was at the very least mortifying after realizing the implication of what I said. Story 92. Taking off a woman's bra, I'm a man, one-handed. Years ago in high school, college, I read that you can remove a bra one-handed by putting your thumb and finger on either side of the clasp and making a snapping motion. When I had the opportunity to try it out with my girlfriend, it actually worked. But then anytime I did it with someone new, I get a raised eyebrow and the done that a few times, huh? Look, story 93. Remembering long sequences of numbers. It's not my fault I can remember credit cards and account IDs after only seeing them once or twice. I see sequences of numbers the same way I see words. A credit card is just 4 words. Story 94. Speaking fluent foreign language with someone with no explanation before or after. An old coworker of mine, my partner on the ambulance, spoke fluent Chinese with a patient and their family. In China, this would probably be no biggie, but being in Ohio and me not knowing she knew anything more than English was very weird. She acted like it was normal. Story 95. Every time I walk into a new room, I take inventory of items that might be useful, even a little. When people are looking for something, I can usually tell them where it is in their own homes and how much of whatever it was is there. I do this everywhere I go and can't stop it if I wanted to. Friend says he's looking for some random PC part. One day I tell him without thinking it's in your basement on a white box next to a black garbage bag. A few odd looks exchanged and voila, it was right there. I had seen it years ago when I helped him carry something heavy downstairs. Story 96. I have a photographic memory. I've definitely gotten some weird looks replies from people when I mention something that I remember about them. Story 97. Work. You work somewhere for a while, you learn the processes, so you work out a more efficient and quicker way to do things whilst achieving the same end. And when you do, you get absolute doubt placed on you because there's no way you should be able to be so fast without skipping some processes. Story 98. Getting people to open up. I'm kind of socially dumb, but I learned that just asking someone questions about themselves will get someone talking for hours. I do this frequently and likely know more about some acquaintances than their own family does. I sometimes get the impression that people suspect I'm trying to get information out of them, but they still just talk endlessly about their goals, fears, childhood, work, secrets, and deep personal stuff. My guess is that most people don't ever really get the chance to pour out their soul to someone, but I'll gladly sit there and listen. Story 99. Being okay at lockpicking is nice, but there's always some curious looks. The same applies when you're good at sharpening knives. Story 100. I never get lost. Ever. I can even find my way to someplace I've never been, just by picking a direction that looks right. And of course, I can always find my way back, even taking a different route and not retracing my steps. I've been accused of having built-in GPS or sneaking looks at maps. I had a scoutmaster convinced I cheated at orienteering because he noticed my compass was broken after I completed the course. Story 101. Working hard. I build roads for a living from beginning to end. Some days are tough when it's hot and we're slip paving 2,000 plus yards of concrete. It can be fairly physical, and I'm 43. I go to work every day with one underlying goal: to outwork everyone else. I do a lot of the thinking as well, but I try not to let those 18 to 20 somethings outwork me physically. If they do happen to outwork me, I gain respect for them. Being a leader, I also try to be upbeat and energetic as well, so I think they probably assume I'm on something. Lol. Story 102. Telling almost instantly by feel if a bill is real or counterfeit, though I think more people should definitely be able to do it. Lower denomination U.S. counterfeit bills can look amazing, but the feel is always off. Story 103. Entering places quietly. My house is old and the floorboards creak, so being quiet while moving around is easy for me. Story 104. Not really every day, but I'm ridiculously good at finding 4-leaf clovers. It kind of freaks people out when I find 10 in less than 5 minutes. I'm not even a particularly lucky person. Story 105. Weight conversions. Doing them slowly is normal. Doing them quickly is smart. Doing them lightning fast makes you look like a substances dealer. Story 106. Opening a letter and resealing it so it looks like nothing ever happened. I worked at an off-brand upper store, and so many people would come in to mail a bill and forget to put the check in before sealing. Story 107. Finding a lot of information about someone online, given a small amount of information about said person to go off of. Story 108. I actually memorize people's phone password after seeing them type it once, so they always wonder how I know the password when they ask me to text someone or look something up for them. Story 109. I don't know why, but I am really good at analyzing people and making accurate assessments on their thoughts. I don't know how to explain it. Story 110. Reading traffic based on sounds, sight, or just the wind. I don't like the noise of the city, so I'll drown out the noise and just look straight ahead but move only my eyes. Took a while to learn, but I can walk across some of the most busy streets with just a glance at the cars. Story 111. I used to own a small handmade cigarette shop 4 years ago. I basically know everything about rolling a cigar with paper or tobacco leaves. I sometimes smoke and roll myself a cigarette. People still look suspicious at me when I roll it in under 20 seconds. Story 112. Telling people what they want to hear in an empathetic way. Doesn't require lying, but those that are good at lying manipulating will become very suspicious of you. Story 113. Lockpicking. My friend got locked out, so I grabbed the bobby pins out my hair and started picking. He thought I was a criminal. It was a master lock. Story 114. Not blinking, apparently. I blink once every few minutes, and whenever I stare at people, they avert their eyes and speed walk away. Story 115. Knife stuff. I am extremely adept with knives and sometimes get weird comments or looks if I do something fancy with one. Story 116. Darn, this peanut butter and jelly sandwich is good. Turns and looks at the missus. A little too good. Suspicious look. Story 117. I have an uncannily strong sense of smell, which means I can go to the bathroom in schoolwork and know who was there based on the products used when people freshen up. Have also walked down the main street in Ginza and smelled someone I'd met 6 months ago before I turned around and saw them walking by behind me. I can also predict if it's going to snow based on how the air smells. Twice I said in the middle of June, weird, it smells like snow. And twice there was a freak snowstorm overnight. All the people who laughed at me were giving me weird stares when they realized everything was covered in a layer of fresh snow. I guess I seem like some kind of voodoo witch. I can also tell how many hours it's been since your last meal or who you met before me just based on scent, which is why it is nigh impossible to cheat on me or her. Story 118. Being able to remember lots of useless information for long periods of time. I've got a great memory when it comes to random details about people's lives. They get suspicious occasionally. Story 119. I can drill the ignition out and bypass the anti-theft of any older model, pre-2004, GM or Chevy. Usually takes less than 15 minutes to have the vehicle running. This is all just mechanic stuff, but I'd make a decent car thief as well. Story 120. We play this drinking game where you take the paper bag from the store, put it on the floor standing up, and you have to bend down on one foot and grab it with your teeth. Each round, you trim a few centimeters off the top and keep lowering the bag until there's a winner. One of my very unathletic friends at the time would easily win every round. It would just be him, and he was flexible enough to get the bag only 6 inches off the ground. People were super impressed and I joked, it's all that practice from sucking your own male body part. And the look he gave me, combined with the awkward laugh, made me think I might have been closer to the truth than I would have hoped. Story 121. A friend of mine would remember freakish details about random strangers. In my previous job, our office building used to have a big food court on the first floor, and the building had other offices too. So many people from our office and other offices used to go and have lunch at the food court. My friend would remember random things like one woman always sitting in the same seat and ordering the same meal for a week. I was like, why is he looking at strangers and wondering about their food, AMD seating habits? And not just one person, he would remember about many people. What an odd thing to remember. Like he's training to be a spy or something. Some people just have a natural talent for data collection and noticing the habits of others, even when they aren't trying to use that information for anything specific. It's one of those traits that highlights just how much detail we usually ignore in the background of our own daily lives. Story 122. Well, once locked my keys in my car and was trying to get the car unlocked for like 40 minutes or so. My dad pulled up and got it open in under a minute. That's a bit sus to me, lol. Story 123. I've had a lot of dumb friends leave their keys in their car and had to break in their car for them. I don't know why I'm good at it, but I find it suspicious, so other people probably do too. Story 124. I have a ridiculous amount of true crime knowledge, really useful when talking to fellow true crime nerds. Real weird to reference in the middle of an unrelated conversation, apparently. Story 125. I'm reading all these responses and realizing I must be super suspicious because I do all these comments. Story 126. My boyfriend remembers details about people's cars and can recognize them easily. Sometimes it seems like he creepily knows where people were over the weekend, but he probs just saw their vehicle. Once driving through my neighborhood, he mentioned that a house 3 streets away had a new car. I'm like, I don't even know what the people 2 doors down from me drive, but he knows most of the cars regularly parked in my neighborhood. Story 120. When you are articulate or good at arguing, it means you enjoy arguing. So when you have an opinion or feeling, it means you're just trying to start shoot. Story 128. If you're a gambler, being too good at playing card games, even if there is no proof of foul play, will get you barred from playing on that property. Casinos dislike losing money in the end. Dana White, yes, that UFC guy, is a good example of that. He's so good that he can't play in several casinos because of it here in town. Story 129. Late answer here, but skills used in Among Us. A lot of the responses here are typically used in Among Us, and if you are good at a lot of them, then you're immediately sus in real life. Haha. Such as remembering people's exact routes, lying, bluffing, convincing people of others' guilt, framing others, feigning ignorance. I assume everyone did it a lot more as kids and just slowly stopped as they reach adulthood, but sometimes people have a crazy knack for it. Personally, I'm able to do all of this pretty well and get eliminated off early frequently, so I can't speak. But an interesting thing to note is that my friend of 16 years can instantly tell when I'm imposter, even if he believes me but he doesn't know why. He just goes off of a hunch. Story 130. The ability to make change in my head. I've been told at cashiering jobs that I'm not allowed to do that. I'm required to type the numbers into the machine. That just takes longer. Story 131. Counting bills quickly. Learned when in Uzbekistan, a place where the highest denomination was 1,000, but a meal at a restaurant cost 20 to 30,000. Story 132. Not tying. Everyone thinks you're either into bondage or you intend to kidnap someone. I worked on a boat in college and had to learn to weave fishing nets. Story 133. There was a restaurant in a Hyatt hotel that had a casino. The waiter from that restaurant remembered our preference when we showed up with a friend 6 months later. Answer. There was a Greek bartender at this whiskey bar in my hometown that would do the same thing. Every time I came in, I looked different. He still remembered my drink. First time I was on my Harley, so I looked like a biker. Second time was a date a few months later, so I was dressed nicer and my beard was better groomed. Third time was probably just standard issue blue jeans and white t-shirt, again a couple of months later. No matter what I was wearing or which girl I was with or how much time passed, I'd sit down at the bar and he'd look at me for a few seconds like he was digging through his memory and say, old-fashioned, right? That dude was eerily good at that and cool as shoot. Story 134. Putting things together and knowing what's about to happen or what happened and why. Kind of hard to explain, but like, say somebody lost something while we are out. I can understand their frame of mind when they are fudge up, use my own frame of reference, and pretty much find the thing they are looking for. But then I seem like I'm just hawking them and creeping. It's useful for personal things. I lost this tiny opal stone out of a ring I had at work, and I really liked it, and I wanted it back. I work in a factory, and I just began putting the pieces together. It took me 3 days to figure it all out. Then I went into work one day and walked right up to the walking beam and looked under it and found it. But if I don't like someone, I won't help them or out. The energy, story 135. In my line of work, sales, there is a method called mirroring where you try to mimic the customer's tone and energy to be more relatable. I've spent many years trying to read people and am introverted as it gets. So I like to think I do this very well, with my fellow men being the easiest to read. Well, my employer noticed this and refers to it as an advanced sales tactic. They pulled me into a Zoom with other employees who suck at closing sales and had me try to teach it to them. Story 130 says, hand speed. I drop things all the time. I'm able to catch them without looking on the way down because I've dropped things so many times. I don't even have to think about it. Story 137. I went to a restaurant once while on vacation in Panama City Beach. Awesome little Italian place. I ordered a seafood dish with the pink sauce. It was incredibly good. So when we returned to the same restaurant 4 years later, I already knew what I wanted. The waiter came over and I recognized him from the first time we were there. He knew my order. He said the dish name to me and said, with pink sauce, right? I have no idea how he could have remembered. I didn't say it out loud before he came over. If he really remembered me, that's insane. Story 138. Customer service worker here. I remember certain regulars' orders to the point that if I saw them pull up, I'd have their order in and ready for them at the window, which is ironic because my memory regarding my childhood or what happened in the last couple weeks is absolute garbage, LOL. When I was really young, I really struggled with typing because of my short fingers, but now I can type really fast. Think 80 to 100 words a minute fast, and I've gotten so many comments on it. My only fear is that I will develop arthritis really bad in my hands because of this and will no longer be able to type as fast as I do now. Story 139. Recognizing people's faces. I often pretend not to remember someone because it can really freak people out. For example, I recognized a woman who came into a shop I worked in once or twice, but it was 20 years later. If I'd talked to her about it, she'd have thought I was a stalker. Story 140. Lying on the spot. A while ago, while hanging out with friends, I was wearing a shirt with palm trees on it, and for some reason, one of them randomly decided to put me on the spot and asked me to tell the group that story about the palm tree. So I just made up a whole story about how I climbed a palm tree when I was a kid on holiday that I wasn't supposed to climb because it was next to a road and didn't understand a kid who was yelling at me to climb down. I assumed because I didn't speak the language and started throwing things at me to get me down. There were other small details I threw in, but I was able to tell it convincingly enough that everyone believed me. The guy who asked me to tell the story just looked at me dumbfounded when I'd finished and asked if it was really true. So I admitted I'd made the entire thing up. Literally nothing like that had ever happened to me, and everyone was really confused but weirdly impressed, and then a little suspicious about what I could have lied to them about. For the record, I rarely lie to people, but I discovered I'm good at it if I ever want to low derail. Story 141. Detecting undercover police. You look very criminal. Even if you don't commit crimes, I became very good at it so I could be entertained by the events that would unfold. Story 142. Mrs. Excel. I found that by taking over reporting from others because it took them so much time. I'd automate it to pull from the database where the previous owner was spending 2 hours a day, copy-paste hundreds of cells. A couple hours work once and I hit a button. Done. ID used to release right away, even with a script to open, refresh, save, and email it. This caused people to not trust the numbers, so now I still pull in the data, but hold off on releasing it for a bit, even a bit late on occasion. Edit. I see a lot of people wanting to learn Excel. I did a lot of trial and error learning. I am mid-50s, so I have some time under my belt. Learning a simple programming language helps. I learned BASIC as a kid and Pascal and Fortran later. VB is the most useful at this point, though. In Excel, you can add a developer tab. Google it. It will show you how to add it to your Excel. You can record macros that record your steps when you do things like insert a column, copy a row, etc. You can then see how it works. Mr. Excel, not to be confused with Miss Excel LOL, is a great resource. Also, learn VLOOKUPs as they are very helpful and you can get how other formulas work. Finally, Google knows all. Answer. Ha, I had a guy give me a stack of papers and say that these had to be put into Excel in their POS database. Said it normally takes 3 days. I laughed, scanned them all into PDF, converted to text, and then automated it. I was done with a double check a couple hours in. He didn't believe me, so went through them all by hand. Took him 2 days and he didn't find any errors. Story 143, Walking Quietly. I surprise my friends for fun with it now. I walk straight up from their front and they can still not notice me until I whisper, boo. The main problem is you default to however you are used to walking. And I used to have a nickname of Foxtrot for around 2 years, replaced by a dumber nickname, sadly. So I usually say hi and call out names from 5 feet away, or I scare people by the time I walked up close. I think it started because my mother complained about how I would scrape my shoes on the ground. So I started walking quietly ever since. Probably? Story 144. Googling oddly. People find it unsettling how quickly I can learn shoot that untrained people aren't supposed to know. All I did was Google search till I found the info and then gave it a try. Story 140. Cleaning out stains. I cut my hand pretty badly once and blood got into my white shirt. I tried to clean it myself, but the stain never got out. I told my mom, who told me to bring it with me when I came back for Christmas break, and she cleaned it. By the way, she didn't even bleach it. Her ability to clean stains so well has since then been suspicious to me. Story 146. Being understanding people's quirky personalities, like mental health and other things, and being okay with said quirks. My fiance has PBD and a load of other mental illness. Honestly, so do I, but no matter what she does, I love her and understand that sometimes she can't help it or things just happen. Story 147. I'm really good at knife roulette. Like I can make direct eye contact with someone while playing and not cut myself. Story 148. Getting people to tell me stuff, open up to me. I guess it's not really a skill, but I've been told there's just something about you that makes me want to tell you everything. Not that I try to, or even that I want people to spill all their stories and secrets to me, but they always do. Like within 5 minutes of meeting people, they will tell me things they say they've never told anyone else. It's a gift. It's a curse. Story 149. Knowing your friends and colleagues' cycles even when they haven't outright told you anything about it, and automatically accommodating to their personal swings and needs. I haven't even had a natural cycle myself in over 10 years, but I just pick up on stuff easily and automatically wants to make life easier for people. So it could be everything from having their favorite candy when needed, compliment them when I knew they felt bloated, discreetly letting them keep a lower tempo when tired, giving the right kind of advice, having extra pads, I rarely bleed myself, etc. I'm totally a creep. Story 150. I have sharp hearing with ADHD, so it's extremely useful when someone is talking straight to my face and I am listening to someone on the other side of the room. Creeped out my boss when I yelled back a comment to a conversation he was confident to have been out of earshot. Story 151. Lying. Some people are so used to lying they can do it without even thinking. I didn't see it in the first dozen comments. Story 152. Not exactly every day, but I once opened a car door for someone with a slim Jim, and I did it pretty easily. The guy I was with looks at me side-eyed like, you did that really easily. Story 153. Not laughing. I can just turn off the emotion to my face. People find that creepy, apparently. I'll still feel the emotion, there will just be no outward expression. Story 154. I can read a person good enough to know how to sell them something more than what they ask for. At this point, I have attachment rate of 60 when it comes to extras when I sell a phone. Extra warranty. Story 155. Just gonna say I fudge dislike when people walk too quietly. My husband scares the shoot out of me at least once a day. Story 156. Keeping a secret, and I do it so good that I forget because my brain classifies the secret information as unimportant, so it kind of dumps the information away. It can be useful sometimes, but if you have a secret dying to tell, you can tell me and it will never go out because I never had the urge to tell another. Unless it's a life and passing situation, then I will tell it away. But other than that, we're good. Story 157. Being a good judge of character. I've had to bite my tongue so many times because I think someone isn't a good person or has issues that will end up hurting my friend or something, and said friend just doesn't see it and goes on anyways. It's happened dozens of times. The person in questions almost always ends up doing exactly what I expected or feared. LMAO, I had a friend a long time ago who legit asked me one day if I could read minds. Wasn't sure how to respond to that one. Story 158. Not speaking a lot. Okay, guys, I don't like talking, and I don't feel like there is something that requires talking now. That doesn't mean I am plotting something. Story 159. Being able to open car doors with a screwdriver in a hood stand. I lock my keys in my car a lot, and a few times I've helped some folks that did the same. They seemed unnerved about how quickly I did it. Story 160. Carving meat or carcasses of an animal. Chicken, turkey, whole hog. Sometimes you look like a pro chef. Others. Well, story 161. I'm a nurse and I set up medications weekly for my residents that the CNA, APCAS then hand out at the appropriate times. Sometimes I have residents with difficulty swallowing large pills, so I crush them in this handle pill crusher thing and in a special bag. But occasionally, not all of the pills get crushed. One day I was at my desk and a PCA says, "Hey, one of these pills in the packet isn't crushed." So as I stand up to get out the machine for it, she takes out her license and a lighter and finishes crushing the other pill in the pack before putting it in some pudding and leaving. Story 162. No idea why, but since I met my now fiancée, I remember almost all of our important convos. It's quite insane. Before I met her, I could barely remember a detail about the other person I was dating. Since being with her, I remember everything from a question she asked 3 weeks ago to her medical aid number. We have been dating for 2.5 years and engaged for 1 week. Story 163. Cleaning liquid spills. If Junior knocks over their glass or the cat gets too close and personal with the fish tank, most people just tend to throw a bathroom towel over it or get out the wet vac. Not super effective and tends to allow time for staining. Some salt, aerosolized carpet foam, and some paper towels will clean up anything like it was never there and in record speed, and all for the low price of making people uncomfortable as they imagine you as a mob cleaner. For extra points, using this method to clean blood out of carpets or off cheap porous tile people's faces are funny as fudge. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Consider my disposals at your disposal, but don't get used to it. I ain't running no charity here. Story 164. Guessing passwords. I had video games addiction during young age. My parents changed the PW once a week because I kept guessing it. When they say a word in weird way, paying close attention to their facial expression, listening to their tapping sound, the state the keyboard is in, are things that help me. But the key is to know how the person thinks. I'm also able to remember most passwords that I have seen once inadvertently. Answer. I set really long passwords for everything because of my helicopter parent. Of a stepmother, one night she went through my phone while I slept and deleted contacts to friends she didn't like. So I decided to make it so it was too much of a hassle to do that again. People get weirded out when I have to type in a password that takes up half the input box. More so when it's a different password a few months later because I got bored. Downside, old phone I've got a password on that I haven't used in years, so I don't remember it. Upside, no one bothers to go through my chute anymore. Story 165. I feel like lockpicking is one that would scare people. Imagine you're locked outside of your home and some random dude offers help and opens your door in less than 5 seconds record time. I would get a new home. Story 166. Finding anyone online when people give them minimal information about that person. My wife has this ability. Like a bloodhound, that woman. Story 167. Being able to lie out of a situation flawlessly. Must have due to my strict parents. Now I just need a minute or so to flawlessly analyze a situation and find the most effective lie that won't get me into any kind of trouble. Story 168. I used to commute to Temple University through the city and became very good at reading graffiti. Some years later, I had to go through corrections boot camp. One of our classes was about gang graffiti. The instructor became very suspicious of me because I was so good at reading it. It didn't help that I was from Philly. Story 169. Command line tools, being able to type and use regular expressions when not currently employed in a relevant field. Story 170. Throwing a punch. Many people don't understand martial arts can have nothing to do with wanting to eliminate someone. Sink a basketball? Wow, that's lots of practice. Throw a hard punch? Dude, what's wrong with you? Story 171. Speaking or being persuasive. My husband is a very eloquent and persuasive speaker and is often mistrusted by people, even close friends. He uses this power in harmless ways, like to reason with people or to express a viewpoint, but he is so good at it. He can often change the viewpoint of the other person because he uses language like magic. It's quite astounding, but in turn, people tend to villainize him. Story 172. Anything with a computer. If you're good enough, with literally anything to do with computers, people will think you're able to hack computers. They'll also think you're able to fix any problem with their computers, which is equally detrimental on its own. Story 173. Being in a conversation, but also not paying attention to anything at all. Like I pretend I'm listening and I answer your questions, but I don't care about what people say most of the time, so I just ignore them while being present and no one really notices until we talk about it again. Story 174. Spatial awareness. I can look at something and tell you whether or not it will fit onto a wall, into a box or car, through a hallway or stairwell, etc. I was at a shipping store a few months ago, and a guy was in line behind me trying to figure out which size box to get for the box he was trying to fit into it. I pointed at a specific size and said, "That one, but only if you put your box in this side up." It slid in perfectly, and he gave me the weirdest look. Somehow, though, I always seem to bump into the corners of tables. Answer: the bumping into things is proprioception, awareness of your body in relation to the space around you. I hit my head so much because of my lack of it. I am also super good at spatial visualization, which is what you seem to be describing too. I can pack and rearrange rooms like nobody's business because I have a good concept of how two other things in space relate to one another in terms of size. But ask me to estimate distance and I'm lost. Spatial awareness is weird. Story 175. Walking quietly, even in steel toe logger boots. It's not intentional. I just walk really quietly. Scares people too, because I'm 6 feet 4 inches, 270 pounds, and I pop up seemingly out of nowhere. I try to be extra stompy when around people so they hear me coming. If I don't space out and forget to, human blockhead trick. Lol, COVID swabs would have been fun if I had needed to be tested. I'm really good at troubleshooting electronics and figuring out electronic solutions at work. No prior training at all. Even I'm suspicious of myself sometimes. Story 176. Remembering people's names. I could have met you and known you for 2 weeks 20 years ago, and I might remember your name. Story 177. So I'm reading these replies, and I think most of the personality-based abstract traits come from trauma responses and coping. Just my take, lol. Story 178. Directions. If I've been somewhere once, I'll always remember exactly how to get there forever. Driving to a friend of a friend's house on total recall 4 years after I dropped someone off there once. So now I pretend to forget. Story 179. Being very handy with sharp knives, knowing how to break up a carcass in very little time and with no effort. That and a substantial knowledge of chemicals. Who thought being a farmer would give me benefits of chemical knowledge? Story 180. Am apparently light on feet cause no one ever notices when I walk into a room and start talking. I scare almost everyone I work with. Story 181. I have a friend who could memorize numbers, ESP, plates of vehicles. He'd then be able to recall it after months in totally random conversations. Edit, never thought this would blow up like this. Many people asked how we'd know he wasn't bluffing. Here is the thing, I know this guy from college. You can imagine how all of us would have gone to lengths to verify such things. Also, it works out to be useful in many situations, and he'd buy somewhat of a personal Google for a few of us, like, hey, I can't seem to remember this guy's number. Do you remember? Answer. So when I was young and bored on car trips, my mom would always try to get me to play the license plate game. TPE, tape, terpene, terpsichore, timpani. Mom, earned, timpani is with an I, not an E. You mistype, tamponity. Turns out the reason Mom was so obscenely good at the game that she could referee it instantly and near perfectly is that apparently she's playing it basically at all times just without saying anything about it. But if something goes down, there is a near 100 chance Mom will know the license plate of the car in question. She has proven this way too many times. Story 182. I have AD out the wazoo, and I would constantly lock myself out of my dorm when I was in college, and I was living on my own with roommates. The RA was sick of me, so I invested in a small, lock-picking set that I would keep in my book bag and got semi-decent at picking my own lock. I could do it in like 6 minutes. Eventually, word got around that I knew how to pick locks, and I had some awkward conversations. Story 183. As a security system salesman, it's literally second nature for me to notice every aspect of someone's security system at their house, even if they don't have one. It's part of my job, as I should know what a potential customer has before I make my pitch. And to be honest, if you own a Ring doorbell camera, please don't put it above your garage door. It looks bad and honestly doesn't make any sense. Story 184. Lock picking. It's actually a very interesting skill hobby, if you may, but people not involved in it could see it as sus. Story 185. Working the cash register. No matter the workplace, I swear some people take their time to get through everything and make sure it's right. Others are just snap and done. No mistakes. Answer. Last place I worked had a system that was obnoxiously slow, but I picked up from one of the managers on day 3 that if you use the keyboard shortcuts instead of waiting for everything to load on the touchscreen, it would still put the commands through. There were a couple spots where you had to wait because it was actually thinking, but beyond that, I'd ask a mandatory question, hit 2 buttons, ask another question, hit another 3, etc. Holiday season, I pretty much never left the register because the only other person who could get through customers as fast as I could was the GM, and she was stuck merchandising most days. Story 186. Remembering things for other people. I pick up random things in conversations, not necessarily in a conversation with me. I like to listen. I'll wish you good luck on that special thing tomorrow. I'll tell you happy birthday. I'll tell you not to forget something. It has saved myself and people around me from getting into shoot situations. Imagine a guy at work who tells you not to forget your wife's birthday next week. Yay, I'm that guy. A DE has taught me to remember the things I pay attention to. Story 187. This might sound weird, but not being a creep. I met a girl online, really interesting and a space freak like me. Stopped talking to me after a while, but eventually we became good friends. When I asked her why did she basically ghosted me for a few months that one time, she said she thought I was in a relationship and was hiding it. The reason she listed: 1, I didn't flirt with her at all. 2, I didn't ask her WhatsApp number. 3, I didn't ask her to meet me. 4, I didn't send her an unsolicited image and/or tried sexting with her. She thought it was too weird for a guy to start talking and not do any of these things. Apparently, the standards are far too low for men. Not that I was actually interested in her that way. I just wanted to talk about space with someone. Anyone. Story 188. Remembering where people live, I ran cross-country and learned all the roads in town. Then I would offer a ride to anyone who needed it. Once I gave them a ride, I could remember the ways to get there, and years later, I'd give them a ride, and they'd freak out because I never asked their address. I actually did this yesterday when I remembered a random conversation from 5 years ago where the street was mentioned and I went there to pick them up. A strong internal map combined with a sharp memory for details can be an incredibly efficient tool, though it clearly comes with its own social hurdles. It's a reminder that what one person sees as a helpful or convenient skill, another might find slightly unsettling if they aren't expecting it. Story 189. This is literally how the series Psych starts. The main character, Sean Spencer, is too good at being observant, and because he kept sending tips to the local police, they called him in for questioning because they thought he might be involved in all those crimes, so he has to pretend to be a psychic. Edit. Now, 2 of my most upvoted comments are psych-related, which is great because it's my favorite show, but don't waste money on me, guys. Answer. Cute show. Like some others, I couldn't get into it at first, but later on binged it. I think it has to do with your own headspace for the most part. Same with The Sopranos. Had to pick that one up again later. In no way are these 2 shows the same. In any regard, lol. Anyway, I know, that I'm not telling the truth. I know, they just don't have any proof. Embrace the deception. Learn how to bend. Your worst inhibitions that tend to psych you out in the end. Yeah, really cute show.